Two teenagers vanished on their way to one of the biggest rock concerts in history, and 50 years later, their disappearance remains one of America's most baffling cold cases.
You know, I've heard about a lot of missing persons cases, but something tells me this one is different.
Well, it really is. Back in July 1973, Mitchel Weiser and Bonnie Bickwit, just 16 and 15 years old, set out to see this massive concert called Summer Jam at Watkins Glen. We're talking the Grateful Dead, the Allman Brothers, and the band all on one stage.
That sounds like it would have been an incredible show. How many people attended?
Get this, around 600,000 people showed up, making it one of the largest concerts in US history. The organizers only expected about 150,000, but by Friday morning, 2 days before the event, there were already 200,000 fans streaming in.
So these two teens just disappeared among all those people?
Well, here's where it gets interesting. They may never have made it to the concert at all. The last confirmed sighting was when they were hitchhiking along Route 97 near Bonnie's summer camp in Narrowsburg. They had sleeping bags, concert tickets, and a cardboard sign that read, Watkins Glen.
And I'm guessing with that many people heading to the concert, they probably thought hitchhiking would be pretty safe.
Exactly. And you know what's really frustrating? When they didn't come home, the police in 3 different New York counties basically dismissed them as hippie runaways. The NYPD even failed to send out bulletins about their disappearance to other agencies.
That's absolutely devastating for the families. What did they do?
Well, they took matters into their own hands in pretty remarkable ways. They distributed thousands of flyers, placed ads in underground newspapers across the country, hired private detectives. Mitchell's sister Susan even went undercover in a cult called the Children of God to try to find information.
Oh, wow. That shows how desperate they were for answers. Did any of those efforts lead anywhere?
Unfortunately not, but you know what's particularly heartbreaking? Even after Mitchell's parents moved to Arizona years later, they kept paying $2.39 every month to keep their name and phone number listed in the Brooklyn directory, just in case their son ever tried to call home.
That detail just breaks my heart. Have there been any promising leads over the years?
Well, there have been 2 major ones. In 2000, this guy named Alan Smith came forward with quite a story. He claimed he was hitchhiking with Mitchell and Bonnie when they stopped to swim in the Susquehanna River. According to him, they both drowned after getting caught in the current.
That seems like it could explain everything. But I'm guessing there's more to it?
Right. The investigators initially found Smith credible, especially since his friends confirmed he'd been telling this story since 1973. But here's the thing, no bodies were ever found, and some investigators later questioned his account.
So, what was the other major lead?
Well, in 2013, a woman contacted police saying she believed her father was involved in Mitchell's murder. She had specific memories from when she was 11 years old, including meeting a boy who identified himself as Mitchell at a restaurant. Police actually conducted excavations in the town of Wayne based on her information.
Did they find anything during those searches?
Just this week, actually, they did another dig at one of those same locations and found a 55-gallon metal drum, but it turned out to only contain stones. You know what's interesting, though? Back in 2000, a psychic had mentioned the letter W being significant, and later it turned out to potentially connect to Wayne, the town where they were searching.
That's quite a coincidence. What do the families want now, after all this time?
They're calling for a proper task force to investigate the case. And you know, with modern technology and resources, there are still things that could be done, like analyzing unclaimed remains along the Susquehanna River, or tracking down that mysterious Volkswagen bus driver from Smith's story.
It really shows how these cold cases continue to affect communities decades later.
Exactly. Their friend Stuart Carton put it perfectly when he said, "I ask myself why I am obsessed with this for all these years. It's because if the tables were turned, that's what Mitchell would do." And you know what's particularly poignant? At their 25th high school reunion, Mitchell's classmates planted a Norwegian red crimson maple tree with a plaque that reads, "Mitch Weiser, Bonnie Bickwit, we still miss you."
That's such a powerful reminder that behind every cold case statistic, there are real people, real communities still searching for answers.
And that's really what this all comes down to. 2 young lives full of promise, 2 families still waiting for answers, and a mystery that continues to haunt everyone who encounters it. As one of the concert promoters said, every tragedy needs a finality to it. 50 years later, we're still waiting for that finality.
She went, and that's the last we saw of her.
It's totally out of character.
What are we looking for?
The worst part about this is we don't know what happened.
There are no answers, and we need to have answers.
Somebody's life is gone from the picture.
In the summer,
MSNBC, the whole picture.
over the last 20 years, the dangers of hitchhiking have been well documented. But in the early 1970s, an era that encouraged freedom and exploration, hitchhiking seemed like a relatively safe and adventurous way to travel. But as two teenagers from Brooklyn, New York discovered, such adventures can turn deadly. In July 1973, the country's attention was turning toward a scandal called Watergate. But 800,000 music fans were focused only on the Watkins Glen, New York outdoor concert, starring the Grateful Dead, the Allman Brothers, and the band. For two of these fans, 15-year-old Bonnie Bickwit and her 16-year-old boyfriend Mitchel Weiser, the trip to the concert would become a decades-long mystery. Bonnie and Mitchel first met at John Dewey High School in Brooklyn, New York, and had a close circle of friends.
Well, they had met in high school and became very close very quickly. And basically, Mitchel's friends and Bonnie's friends, we all became one group.
In that summer of 1973, while Bonnie was working at a summer camp in the Catskills, Mitchel had a summer job at a photography studio back home in Brooklyn. He and his friend Larry bought tickets for the Watkins Glen concert.
Ordinarily, my mother was very permissive, but she just had a really bad feeling about this, and it just stuck with her that she just was not going to let me go.
Larry canceled, so Mitchel decided to meet Bonnie at Camp Wellmet and take her to the concert instead. They planned to meet other friends at Watkins Glen, but Mitchel's family worried about this new plan.
When my mother heard about the change of plans, she just didn't want him to go, and there was a lot of pleading from her for him not to go. She said, let me get you some more money, and he ran out of the house.
Mitchel left Brooklyn on July 26 with just $25 in his pocket. He got on a bus to Narrowsburg, New York, the town closest to the camp. Meanwhile, Bonnie was trying to get time off to go to the concert with Mitchel. Her parents were vacationing on Cape Cod and had no idea their daughter was planning to leave.
She was, in fact, very unhappy at her job. Ultimately, I think she felt like she was being exploited, that she was working 16 hours a day. And he wouldn't give her the night off. And she quit and said, I'm leaving.
Mitchel arrived at the camp around midnight. He spoke to his sister on the telephone and told her he had taken a cab from town and had already spent his $25.
We were worried. We didn't know what happened, and I said, look, if you don't have the money to go to the concert, don't go. And he didn't want to hear it.
The next morning, with no money and no transportation, the couple had to find a way to travel to the concert.
She made a big sign saying to Watkins Glen, and they were planning to hitchhike there. On the camp roads, there'd be trucks and vans coming in and out of camp. You could get a ride into town relatively easily with somebody. She borrowed a sleeping bag from a friend, said, I'll be back on Monday.
We expected him back on, I think, Sunday night. And we just, we're just waiting for him to come home, and he wasn't showing up.
When Bonnie's parents returned home a few days later, they quickly learned something was terribly wrong.
It was Tuesday, and my husband was home, and he received a call asking if Bonnie was home. And he said, no, she's not home. Isn't she at camp? And that's when we found out.
Bonnie and Mitchel never made it to the concert. Neither of them has ever been seen again. Bonnie's parents immediately traveled to the summer camp where they reported the disappearance to local authorities. But in an era with the slogan, "Turn on, tune in, drop out," the police assumed their disappearance was only temporary.
The newspapers, everybody, they were looked at as runaways. It was the times, you know, I mean, it was, people were running away. People were escaping. They were doing their own thing. They were going on communes. They were living differently. That's how the police viewed it.
The Bickwits received a letter Bonnie had written just 3 days before leaving for the concert. It only strengthened the theory that the couple had run off.
Dear Mom and Dad, I love you both very much. Up here, I have my independence. If on my time off, I feel as though I want to get up and leave, and it is physically possible for me to do so, I do it. I don't have to tell anyone if I don't want to. I really want for you to allow me to, and not mind my traveling and doing things. After reading the letter, I felt, well, she'll be gone for the summer and come back certainly the end of the summer and back to school again.
But as the weeks and months passed and there was no word from Bonnie or Mitchell, both families began to fear the worst. Police felt the pair may have run away, but their families felt differently. Neither Mitchell or Bonnie seemed the type that would leave family and friends without a word.
It was totally out of character for her to leave without the intention of coming back. If a kid is going to fall apart, there would be lots of ways that it would happen, and they wouldn't be honor students. They wouldn't be so close with family. Something would start to happen. And this was not the case, except a letter home and an unhappy job, that she was going to run away with her boyfriend and not come back.
Bonnie and Mitchell were both intelligent, outgoing, and responsible young people.
Mitchell was very, very bright, and so was Bonnie. And very outspoken and very articulate, and certainly were the type of students that were very popular.
Desperate for answers and receiving little help from police, the families contacted the FBI and members of Congress for help, to no avail. They began to search for Bonnie and Mitchell themselves, exploring even the most remote possibilities.
I had seen different psychics, and some felt that they were in California. And then I have this friend who joined the Hare Krishna group in California. And I wrote to her and asked her if she could look into it further. And I got in touch with different underground papers. Wherever there was a lead, I try to follow.
Next, the trail goes cold until a reporter picks up the scent when Missing Persons returns on MSNBC.